thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. It's really nice to have you all here today. And the reason that we are putting on this session really is that we know that managing your money can be a bit of a maze, especially when you're navigating it with a visual impairment. So today we're going to dive into this topic together with our lovely lineup of speakers who are ready to share their experiences and their wisdom with you. We are going to delve into practical strategies, share first-hand experiences, and explore the support available to you so that you're well prepared for this aspect of adult life. So we're going to cover things like understanding different types of bank accounts, navigating online banking, accessing benefits, and protecting yourself from fraud and scams. We're going to chat about it all. So I hope you're sitting comfortably, you've got a cup of tea, and ready to dive in. So to start with, I'm going to ask our lovely panelists to introduce ourselves to you so that you can get a sense of who we are. And then what we'll do is we'll then ask you to tell us a bit about you. We'll open a poll here on Zoom. So you will have a question pop up on your screen asking you to score how confident you feel about money management at the moment. But before we get there, I'm going to ask our lovely panelists to introduce themselves. So panelists, I'm going to ask each of you to tell us your name, your role, and a little bit of background about why you're speaking here today. So I'm going to start with Chloe, if that's okay.
Yep, that's fine. So I'm Chloe. I am one of Look's mentors, but I am also a children and family support officer for my local sight loss charity. So I decided to come and talk to share, I guess, my experiences of supporting other people, but also my experiences of applying for benefits and things myself.
Lovely, thank you, Chloe. Charlotte, do you want to go next?
Yeah. Hello, I'm Charlotte. I'm a new mentor. I have a background of having benefits myself. Also having been in social care and having the understanding of how to go about of getting support workers and different sorts of support for yourself.
Lovely, thank you, Charlotte. Naki, how about you?
Good evening. I'm Naki. Apologies for all the background noise that you can hear. I'm outside. It's not because I have 50 kids, I promise. So forgive me for any background noise or for the video isn't clear. So I'm Naki and I am one of the Look mentors as well. I am completely blind, so I have an eye condition called congenital glaucoma. I work in financial services at the moment and have done for the last seven or so years. So I'm hoping I have a little bit of knowledge or insight that I might be able to share on various aspects linked to financial management and money management, because that's something I knew nothing about. Still don't know a massive amount, but I hope I know a bit more than I did when I started 7 years ago. So great to be with you all.
Lovely, thank you, Naki. And last but not least, Dom.
Hi, I'm Dominic Milne and I work for RNIB, Royal National Institute of Blind People. I work in the legal rights department and my specialism is welfare benefits. Challenging bad decisions, of which there are many, when it comes to disability benefits and means tested benefits, and also income maximising. So looking, and what I hopefully do today is give you some ideas about how you can hopefully get the best or get the most help you can financially in terms of benefits.
Lovely, thank you guys. So to give us a bit of an idea then, before we get chatting on our different topics, we're going to open up the poll now and I'd be really interested to hear from you guys. So the question is going to ask you, how confident do you feel with money management right now? The options you've got are not confident at all, somewhat confident, very confident, or I'm not sure. So if you'd like to answer that poll, you can tab through if you're using a screen reader, or swipe through, or just use your cursor if you're using magnification. But if you can answer that poll, that'll just give us an idea of what the feeling is in the room. Just give you a minute or two to do that poll, and then we'll get chatting on our discussion. So thank you guys. We've had all responses and most people are saying somewhat confident. So that's really good for us to know. So everybody feeling generally okay, but with a little bit of room for improvement. So that's brilliant. So what we're going to do to start with is hear from our mentors, Chloe, Charlotte, and Naki, a bit about their experiences and what they've learned along the way. So to start with, Chloe, can I turn to you and ask you to tell us a bit about what it was like for you when you first started managing your own money? Yeah, what was that like for you?
Yeah, so I was quite fortunate in that my parents trusted me. So I was given access to my own bank account when I was about 15, 16. And I was given just a small amount of money like each month. Usually it was for like bus fare and lunch at school and stuff like that. But I think that helped because it taught me the value of like saving and being kind of savvy with money. And then when I turned 18, my parents gave me access to my savings account that they'd sort of been keeping throughout the years. They'd accumulated all of my DLA into, or not all of it, but a lot of my DLA into a bank account and then gave me that for savings, like when I was going to uni. Um, so that was really helpful because it meant that I could kind of like section off my savings into money for rent, money for food, that sort of thing whilst I was at university. And then I didn't make the transition from DLA to PIP at 16 as you should. It took me until I was about 21 to apply for it myself. So since then, I've been kind of managing money with PIP. And I think having a set amount with PIP is quite helpful because it means that I can then get into a routine of learning how much I get and then again sectioning it off into how much I've got for bills, leisure and then leisure and stuff like that, and how much is disposable to put into savings.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chloe. Thank you for telling us a bit about that. Charlotte, can I come to you and ask you the same question? What's your experience?
So when I first opened a bank account, I actually went in to the bank account myself, and but before that, my parents had like Chloe, they had ownership of my DLA because it is called disability living allowance when you're a child, and then you transfer to something called personal independence payment when you're at the age of 18. So my mum had quite a lot of charge over this. And when I first opened a bank account, I went in with my dad and they told me all about the different bank accounts that you can have. I decided just to have a regular debit account where you could just put savings in or money and put checks in and do day-to-day banking. This was helpful for me because they were able to explain to me the other options so that I could decide which account I would like to have. Now I do a lot of online banking because I have mobile banking on my iPhone and I can use my voiceover app. So I think it just depends what is best for you. You can look at different options online, but you can also go into a branch. I know now a lot of branches are probably closing, so it's probably better to go and have a look online and see which ones in your local area are actually open still before you decide to go in or have a look online.
Great, thank you, Charlotte. Did you have any help with kind of learning to manage your own money to start with?
I think because if I were, I think so, but not really. I kind of worked it out myself. I'm quite, as my dad says, I'm quite a tight person, but I'm not really. I know, like, you know, if I want something, I can just go and buy it if I want to. But I know that, you know, if I wanted £100 coat, I probably wouldn't spend £100 on a coat if I didn't think that I wanted that was reasonable enough.
Okay.
But
Thanks,
you know,
Charlotte.
he says just go and spend your money, and I'm like, but okay.
Well, we're gonna chat a bit more about budgeting later on, I think. So maybe we can come back to that £100 coat.
But yeah, going back to benefits,
Yeah.
I feel that a lot of I didn't really have a lot to say over mine because mine was a lot controlled over my mum, and I didn't really have a lot to say about it until I was an adult. So
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's the case for a lot of people, isn't it? So,
yeah.
thank you, Charlotte. Naki, how about you? What was the point when you started managing your own money, and what was that like?
Yeah, so for me, it was probably a bit different compared to both Chloe and Charlotte because I didn't really, well, I didn't grow up in the UK. I came to the UK when I was 24 to do my master's. So when I was 18, I was living in the Middle East at the time where my dad was working. So I didn't really have a bank account till I started working at 22, and then I had a bank account in the Middle East. But then I didn't really do a massive amount with it because I don't really know much about money or what to do. I just had, I guess, a basic current account with a debit card. But when I came here, I obviously did my master's, opened my bank account, and then started to work in financial services sort of a year and a half later. Started to find out a little bit more, and then started to think about what more can I do to help me manage my finance better, to make my money work harder for me in some ways. I think it started off largely from a branch experience because I didn't really know what was out there from a online mobile experience. And I think one of the other things is even if you are very savvy to manage your money online or using a mobile banking app, it can actually be really nerve-wracking because you don't know if you're going to make any stupid mistake and then lose a lot of money, or if there's going to be
Yeah,
any other issue that you might not think of. And now when we think about different banks that allow you to open your bank account online, it's not always the simplest of things because you often have to take a photo of a driving license or a passport. You have to record a selfie video, and you never know if you're doing it in the right way, if you have the correct lighting, if the camera's in the right focus. That can be quite hard. So I started off in a branch, and I think have done a little bit of branch interaction for something more complex. But day to day, I manage everything on my mobile banking because I find it fairly straightforward. I've also, learned a little bit more in terms of how to shop around and think about, is there a savings account which is slightly better than the one I currently have? Because what a lot of people tend to do is to become fairly complacent and go like, I'm going to leave all my money in the bank account and not really shop around. And you know what? You will lose a lot of money as a result because up until a few months ago, inflation was super high, interest rates were super low, so your money was losing value at a really, really high rate. So yeah, I would say largely on mobile, a little bit on telephone, and very, very, very occasionally in branch as well.
yeah. Okay, thank you guys for giving us a bit of an overview of your kind of experiences. So we have touched on this a little bit already, and I want to come back to this point about benefits that I know that Dom was going to dive into a bit more later as well. Chloe, can you tell us a bit more about you? You mentioned that you didn't make that initial transition from DLA to PIP, and I know that you support the people with doing this now in your role. So, can you just talk us through a bit about that, what that process was like for you?
Yeah, of course. So I was on DLA up until 16, as most people are nowadays. And you get given a letter that tells you to like kind of invites you to make that transition, and you have to ring PIP and ask for the form kind of thing. And I think we did that. And someone came to the house to assess me and essentially said that I probably wouldn't get it because my visual impairment wasn't severe. I was only registered as partially sighted at the time. So because of that, my mum sort of didn't bother to fight it, and I, as a result, had quite a negative opinion of PIP and the benefit system in general. So I thought, oh, I'll never bother. I won't get it. I won't bother. But then I when I was at uni, I got diagnosed with ADHD. And that sort of spurred me on to think, okay, well, I've got 2 disabilities now. I'll give it a shot because I might have more of a chance of actually getting PIP. And if I'm being completely honest, I did it myself, like kind of on a whim. I thought I'll just give it a shot. I don't really know what I'm doing. And yeah, I definitely could have filled it in better. And I think now, knowing what I know, in terms of, supporting people, I think I genuinely don't know how I did get PIP, but by some miracle I did. I managed to get the enhanced rate for both, because there's 2 rates. There's standard rate and enhanced rate for both the daily living component and the mobility component. Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is kind of like knowing how to word it. And I think that's the biggest thing that I support people with now, is knowing like what sort of things to talk about, how to word it, and thinking about, I'm sure Dom will touch on this, but thinking about the way that you do things, how long it takes you, how safely you can do it, how reliably you can do it. That's the biggest thing. And I think the biggest thing that supporting parents with is to and like it's really difficult because you have like a deficit way of looking at your child and what they can't do, and or looking at yourself and what you can't do. And it is hard. And I think I've become kind of like desensitized to it. So the way I go about it is by giving other people examples of the types of things that they could put in and being like, oh, do you struggle with this? Like kind of prompting people to think about what they struggle with. I encourage people to keep like a diary or like a daily routine of what they do and how long it takes them and that kind of thing.
Because it can be hard to zone in on those things. If
Yeah.
like you say, if it's your daily life, you're so used to doing things the way you do them that you might not always want to, just like you say, focus on the stuff you can't do. It's not the best way to live your life, is it? So but it's a bit of a funny practice having to do that to then apply for those benefits. But as you say, it's though those benefits are there to kind of help us get on a level playing field, aren't
Yeah.
they?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Charlotte, I'm going to come back to you now and ask you to tell us a bit more about other kinds of kind of support and sort of financial support that you can access through social services. So you'd mentioned earlier that you have experience of using support workers and getting kind of financial aid through social services. So could you just tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so I went in, well, when I was 9, I went away to a visually impaired school for people with visual impairments. This funding finished when I was 19. I went to the school and the college. Then I went home back to my parents' house for a little while and completed my level 3 in childcare. After that, I decided that I wanted to be able to live as independently as possible with a visual impairment. So one day I looked online at supported living houses to see what was out there. I found a supported living house in Maidstone in Kent that's also run by an organisation called Seeability. So I then had to speak with social workers to be able to get the funding from Essex County Council to then fund me in Kent. After this, they decided so I could be funded to be within the supported living house. They decided to give me a card which is called a direct payment card, where they do an assessment to start with to see what your needs are, how many hours you might need, and after that they will give you a card that puts the amount of money on this card for your care, and then at the end of every month you will then ask someone who has got better vision to help you sit down and ring the company that you have to ring to pay the invoice, so you can have a bit more independence of managing your finances for support workers. If you don't wish to go into supported living, you can also use this money to pay for private support workers or different agencies, but it's called direct payment card, and they will put money onto this card, and you can then use this card to pay for your support staff, or as they call it, a PA, which is a personal assistant.
Brilliant. Thank you, Charlotte. That was so clear. So it's really interesting to get an idea of the different kinds of support that people can access, isn't it? Depending on,
Yeah.
what your specific needs are. So thank you.
Okay.
So kind of coming back to this idea of bank accounts and coming back to basics a little bit, I'm going to turn to you, Mackie, again now. Can you tell us a bit about what the difference is between different kinds of bank accounts, and what is a current account versus like a credit card? Can you talk us through some of the basics fairly quickly, if that's possible, just to give us a starting point?
Yeah, so why don't I start with current accounts, yes, other accounts, and then come on to the cards bit, if that works,
Yeah,
because that might be a logical
perfect.
link. Amazing. So I think most people would be familiar with most of this, so forgive me if I'm preaching to the choir in some ways. But a current account is essentially a very basic account which every bank has to provide, where you essentially keep your money. The idea for that is that you can get money in, let's say salaries or benefit payments, anything like that. And then for basic outgoings, which might be for rent or groceries or bills, leisure, anything else. Now, pretty much all current accounts will come with a debit card, because a lot of the times, people will use their debit card to either pay in store, for example, when you're out, or pay online. You can obviously use that debit card in ATMs as well to withdraw money if you want to pay in cash. But most current accounts will not come with any sorts of benefits like interest, for example. Some of them might offer a little bit, but generally not. However, there are some enhancements, or what they call packaged current accounts, where you can get added perks, which will normally come either with a condition that you deposit a certain amount of money, and I can touch later on why banks do that, or you pay a certain fee. So, for example, with a certain bank account, they might say if you pay £10 a month, you might be able to get insurance for your mobile phone, or you might be able to get travel insurance, or you might be able to get a certain amount of cash back. And cashback essentially has just to do with whatever money you spent on a card with a particular merchant or a retailer, for example. You get a certain percentage of that money back. And obviously, that is to encourage spending. That's basically a current account. Everyone who has a bank account will have a current account, more likely than not. Then you have other accounts as well that might be particularly around savings. And as the name suggests, that's for you to save some money, put that money aside. Now, those could either be instant access, so you might want to put some money aside, ideally 6 months of your salary aside for instant access, because in case of whatever situation, like you being made redundant, you might want to get access to that money quickly. Now, that typically will offer you less interest than more of a fixed term, or where you have your money locked away for longer, because what that then will do for the bank is allow them to use that money to invest somewhere else and then pay you a higher rate of interest. You also have ISAs, which again, some of you may have heard of, where you can use it as a savings account, but the biggest benefit of that is you can use that as an interest-free way to save, in the sense that generally for most people under the 50,000 salary bracket, which would be most of us, if you earn interest more than £1,000 a year, you would have to pay tax on that. But in an ISA, you can have £20,000 every year, where you can put that money away and don't have to pay any interest on that money. So those are kind of the basic terms. And obviously you have a huge variation and different permutations and combinations of the various types of accounts that you can have. But those are the other three main that I'd focus on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in terms of cards, so a debit card, fairly self-explanatory. You have money in a particular account. So your current account, as an example, you have a card associated with that. You can use that to spend. You can use that to withdraw money. Now, that money is coming out of the money that you already have. So if I have £1,000 in my current account, I can spend up to £1,000 using my card. A credit card is slightly different. So a credit card, as the name suggests, is on credit, money that you don't already have. So if I go to my bank now and say, you can see from my history, I've been a pretty responsible person when it comes to managing my money. I would like a credit card, which will allow me to spend more than what I currently have. So coming back to the example again, if I have £1,000 in my bank account, but I want to go on this really expensive holiday for £2,000, I can't actually pay for that because I don't have that money at the moment. So if I have a credit card which has a limit of £4,000 as an example, I'll be able to spend the £2,000 and then pay my bank back. Now, there is a lot of things that you should definitely be careful of when it comes to interest rates, when it comes to other charges that the bank might apply, but also how it affects your credit score. So we can touch upon some of those things later if those would be useful. But that's just to give you an idea of how debit cards and credit cards are very different and have a lot more implications in some ways as well. You don't need to get approval for a debit card because that's money that you already have. You do need a bank to approve you for a credit card.
Great, thank you, Naki. That was such a good comprehensive summary, and we can dig into that a bit more later, like you say, if we've got more questions. So, in terms of that overview, then there's obviously quite a lot to get your head around, possibly if you're kind of really new to this. What can your bank do to support you? How can your bank support you to, access your banking in an accessible way, but also just to understand what you need to do and all the different options available?
Yeah, it's a fabulous question. I will answer that in two parts. The first part is I will say that when it comes to making your money work harder for you, when it comes to making sure that you get the most value out of the money that you're giving your bank, because you're not, the bank's not doing you a favor, you're doing them a favor, because whatever money we put in the bank, they use that money to invest elsewhere and then give you a small percentage of that back, which is how they make their money. So you need to demand your rights, but also you don't need to go to your bank to, in some ways, know where's best to put your money. There are loads of brilliant comparison websites out there. I'm sure people have heard of Martin Lewis or my Money Savings Expert, Money Supermarket, where you can shop around to see if I want to save my money in an instant savings account, which bank, for example, would offer me the best rate. The really important thing is, because there might be some dodgy institutions as well, you have to make sure that they are covered by what we call the Financial Services Compensation Scheme, FSCS. And what that means is even if the bank goes bust, your money up to £85,000 will be protected with that financial institution. So do not open any sort of account with a bank that is not FSCS protected. Most of them will be. So don't rely on your bank for knowing where's best to place your money. When it comes to your bank supporting you, apologies for the background noise, hope you can still hear me okay.
Yeah.
When it comes to demanding your rights from your bank, they have to make sure that you can manage your money independently. You shouldn't have to rely on your friends or a signed-in helper or your parents to do that for you. So there's a few regulations. I won't bore you with the details of those, but what they effectively mean is, or what they effectively mandate banks to do is to make sure that vulnerable customers, and vulnerability can be for a whole host of reasons, right? It could be because of capability, it could be because of life events, it could be because of resilience, it could be because of a health condition. They need to make sure that they have measures to help you out. But obviously, a bank can only help you if you let them know that you have a particular need. So if I, as a blind person, don't let my bank know that I would prefer statements in an electronic format, they'll keep sending me letters because they won't know any better. So we have to let our banks know, because a lot of banks now have procedures where they can add a profile marker that when you call, when you visit a branch, or when you sort of apply for something on the app, it will flag up, oh, this person has these access requirements. And it could just be, for example, I need you to speak slightly slower. I need you to repeat yourself because I find it hard to understand. Like lots and lots of things. So it's not just particular something linked to just visual impairment. So make sure that you tell your bank that these are my access needs. This is how I want you to help me. If, for example, that app is not accessible or a certain portion of that is not, you should be able to speak to them on the phone or have another way in which they can service you. And obviously, if they don't, then make sure you raise a complaint. If they still don't do anything with that, there's also another independent body called the Financial Ombudsman Service. Now, they will normally get complaints where a bank has tried to resolve it, but the customer said, nope, I'm not happy with this. I need to escalate this further. And then they will look at it independently and see whether you're the one at fault or the bank. If it's the bank, then you will get some sort of compensation, or there might be some sort of retribution against the bank. But it's really important to not stop and not just say, oh, my bank's not helping me out, I'm gonna just rely on my parents to read my statement or to help me. You should be able to manage your finances independently, and the bank should help you facilitate that through whatever means is required.
Great, thank you so much, Naki. That's really, really helpful to get an idea of, where we stand with all these things. So thank you. I want to turn to Dom in a minute, but I just thought we'd finish off. I just wanted to turn to you, Chloe, just to finish this section and ask you if you've got any hacks or any tips for kind of managing paying for things in store, managing, different cards, because we've just talked about all the different kinds of cards you can have. So if you've got more than one card in your wallet, how do you distinguish them? The really kind of practical stuff, really. How do you manage that?
I have always used, well, since it's been a thing, have used Apple Pay or Google Pay, just because when I have had multiple cards, you can like flick between them. So it makes it easier. You're not having to search for the card. It's there on your phone. But if you obviously do want to use different cards, I think there are, banks that have things on their cards, like tactile markers on the cards that will help you identify them. So mine has like a notch like in the side of it that will help you identify it. And my old RBS card had Braille on it. So that helped me to identify the difference between them. And also I have color perception, so I can see, the difference in the colors. I think Barclays as well, you can customize your card. So you could make it like a really bright color if like contrast is super important to you. And then in terms of like actually paying for things, like contactless is a game changer. But also like using an actual like keypad. That was something that I was really anxious about as a teenager. And I think knowing that all of them are the same, like they all have the same layout. So once you've learned like the 5 is in the middle and learn the layout of the keypad, it can help you to manage it without being able to see the numbers and things.
Great, thank you, Chloe. Some really good tips there.
Alan, could I also just mention something very quickly?
Yeah.
Apologies for the interruption, because Chloe made a good point. I think what's really important as well is to know that if you do manage your banking on your app, for example, a lot of banks will offer you the provision as well to see your card details and your PIN in the app as well. So if you're let's say buying something online and like me, you might not remember all your card numbers. It's really helpful because then you can just, using whatever technology you have, like voiceover, going to your app and seeing what your card number is, what the expiry is, what the PIN is, so you don't have to rely on the physical card in those instances. When it comes to shopping as well, it can be a little bit tricky because Chloe's absolutely right. You do have sort of a set format for what the keypad is on those card machines, but a lot of card machines sadly now are touchscreen, which is an absolute nightmare for me, which is where you can think about options around either cash or mobile wallets, where you can use your own, either finger ID or face ID to then validate that particular transaction.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. That's
Ellen,
that's a really
can
good
I
point.
just add something?
Yeah, definitely.
I'm not sure if other people are aware, but one of my other friends that is visually impaired, she showed me that on a £10 note you got like Braille, so it'll have, I don't know if it says 10 or what it says, but I've just worked out that because I quite like to have money in my purse, but I will use a card as well, and I think that using a card is a lot easier. But like Chloe was saying, I've learnt the layout of the keypad, and I just put my hand in the middle to the 5, and then just move my hands around to the other numbers that I need. But with a £10 note, you'll have 2 lots of dots going down. On a £20 note, you'll have 3 dots going down from the right hand corner. So this is how I know what is a £10 note and a £20 note. And on the £5 notes, they don't have any. Not too sure what they have on the 50s because I've never had one.
No, do you know what? I've never seen one. So
They do. They have
They
4
do?
of them instead of 3. Yeah. So the 10
4.
has 2, the
Okay.
20 has 3, and the 50 has 4.
Okay.
There you go.
And then obviously it's a bit harder with coins. Like I know a 20p coin is like a like a hexagon and stuff like that. But
Yeah, so it's good that there
yeah,
are tactile ways that you can tell the difference on
and
cash,
just
isn't
think
it?
if you're in the queue in the shop and you think, oh God, I've got to rush because there's a person behind me. Don't think that at all. They just have to wait for you to work it out, because I thought this and I always used to use a note instead of cash or a card, and now I just use whatever I want, and I just think, oh well, the person behind me will just have to wait then.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you, Charlotte. That's a good point. Yeah, lots of really cool tips there. Thank you, guys. So I'm going to hand over to Dom now, to tell us a bit more about the benefits and the support available to us. We've touched on a few things already, I think. So yeah, it'd be nice to hear from you, Dom.
Great, yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, following on actually from what Chloe was saying, because she gave a really good introduction to one of the key things, the key benefit, really the disability benefit for people of working age. So as Chloe said, when you get to 16, you can be on disability living allowance before that, but then you have to claim PIP. And I'm going to assume everybody here has reached that point. So some people will be on PIP perhaps, and some may not at the moment. And even if you are on it, there's a very good point that was also raised, was that you may not be on the rate that you should be on. And you may be that you're on a lower rate. Now, the good thing about PIP is, to sing its praises for a minute, it's non-means tested, so it doesn't matter what else you've got in life. The idea of it is it's a disability benefit, and it's designed to help cover the extra costs that arise from having a disability. So it's not something that it doesn't get taken off any other money you get. It's you can be filthy rich and get PIP technically if you pass the criteria for it. And the criteria, or you can be, as most people are, not filthy rich, and you can be on other benefits, or you can be working, you can be a student. Anything you're doing is fine, providing you pass the criteria for it. And they look at how your condition affects you. They look at your ability with PIP to prepare food, to eat food, to manage your therapy, or anything, monitoring your condition, washing, bathing, using a toilet, dressing, undressing, communicating, reading, engaging with other people, and looking after your money that you've been describing here, making budgeting decisions and managing to deal with your finances. All those things they look at, and they give you a score of either 8 or 12 points, hopefully, because if you get one of those points, you'll get either an standard or an enhanced rate. And the highest rate, the enhanced rate that was mentioned earlier for daily living, is actually 101.75 a week. And the standard rate is currently £68 and 10pence, and they go up in a couple of weeks actually. With mobility, it's 71 and 26.50. They're the two different rates. Now, it's really key that people claim this. We do a lot of work trying to encourage people to claim, because an awful lot of people who should be claiming PIP just aren't claiming it. We had some research done recently, which is slightly embargoed at the moment, but it's going to be released in a few weeks, in probably quite a big press splash. We did this research for all these people who are blind or partially sighted, and a very high level of them, a very high number, were not claiming anything or had never claimed it. They weren't getting any money, or they'd never even tried. So it's really important that people do. The process of claiming it and getting it is quite tough, as Chloe described. It's a tough old form. It takes a bit of work. It's complicated. It's detailed. The other thing as well is that it's really really important to say is that it's not just about your ability to do those things that I've mentioned there, like preparing food or washing and bathing or dressing or undressing, etc. It's about how you do them and how long it takes, whether you can do those things safely to an acceptable standard, reasonably regularly, as regularly as something would need to be done. So in other words, if you can make a meal once a day, but then you don't manage to do it the other times in the day, that's not enough, because most of us need more than one meal in a day. So it has to be however often that thing should be happening. And you have to not be able to do it for more than 50% of the time. So in other words, if you can do things most of the time, that probably wouldn't get you an award. But if for more than 50% of the time you struggle to do them, then you should get an award. Now, the big thing to say is that the DWP don't always make the right decision. Chloe mentioned not getting turned down at 16 and a mum and dad not chasing it. It doesn't actually, it happens a lot, this, unfortunately. People don't challenge, but if you challenge your decision, and that does take a bit of patience and time, because it can take a while for the DWP to look at it again if they turn you down. And then if they turn you down, you can then ask for an appeal, and the appeals are 68% successful in favour of claimants. So if you've got the, if you can appeal and if you can push, then you should do so. However, it's really important to say you don't have to do this on your own. You can get help, and it's a really good idea to get help. We've got at RNIB, we've got a helpline, which is, I'm going to give you several times. It's 0303 123 9999. It's really important that if you ring that number, they will assess you. They'll work out what you could be. And this could be if you're getting PIP already and you're getting the lower rates, and you might want to check, do I qualify for the higher rates? They'll be able to check whether that's possible, help you with getting the claim going, and if it doesn't work, helping you with the challenge as well. And we have a very high percentage success rate in terms of getting people that benefit. So PIP is really key. So like I say, I don't know how many of you are getting it now. If you're not getting it, you should be looking at whether or not you can get it. And you're probably going to have a reasonable shout of getting a claim, getting an award. And if you are, like I say, if you're already getting it, then you might want to check whether you are getting the right amount of that benefit. Income maximizing is a big thing. It's something that we have to do more of. Cost of living crisis at the moment, but even if there wasn't a cost of living crisis making it harder, it's still really important. So do please check that out. The other benefit that I'm going to talk about reasonably briefly, although it's quite hard because it's quite a complicated one, is universal credit. Now, this is different from PIP. In other words, it's not a non-means tested benefit that anybody can get. It's only for people who have not got enough money to live on. Now, that can be because you've got no income, or it might be because you're in a low-paid job or a part-time job. It tops your money up to a certain amount that the government says that you should have. Now, that amount that you can have, it's a different amount for an individual than it is for a couple. There are amounts that you can have if you've got children, and they add on amounts as well if you have what they call limited capability for work-related activity. So in other words, if your condition is such that it's tougher for you to find work, and it may be that you can't really go looking for work because it's just not practical because of your condition, you would give them a fit note, or a sick note as we used to call it, from the doctor to say that you can't look for work. And they would then give you a test called the work capability assessment. And the work capability assessment then assesses whether you have this limited, well, there's two things it can give you. It can give you limited capability for work, which is useful, but it doesn't give you more money on your universal credit, whereas limited capability for work-related activity does. It's a higher bar that they set for qualifying for that. We work with people all the time, advising them on this, representing them, getting them through that testing, hopefully getting them the higher rate wherever it's appropriate. It's very important that you do that. One of the key things for young people that we always have to say is that if you can get what they call this limited capability for work, and you also get PIP, or you get a disability benefit, you can then get universal credit as a student. There are a few different ways you can get universal credit as a student, but not many. And the disabled student angle is one that is not known about by too many people, but you can get universal credit, and it can make a big difference to a student if you can get it. You've got to have your limited capability for work award before you start your course. And one thing we would advise people to do, and anybody can do this, if anybody here is thinking of going on to study in time to come, you can make a claim for a credits only employment and support allowance, which won't give you any money unless you've been working for years beforehand, but it will give you the opportunity to have this assessment. Now, it's a bit complicated, but I would just suggest that if you're thinking of studying, or if you're thinking of going into study in a year or two, do get in touch with RNIB and we'll take you through that process. Do give us a ring and we can make sure that happens. Otherwise, universal credit, it tops up income. You might be that you can work, but you can only work part-time. It's like the case for many people. And it might be that you want to do that, and then you get some top-up money from universal credit to help. It helps with housing costs as well. They're the two benefits that I want to really make sure that people were fully aware of. PIP, universal credit. They're both worth checking out. If you were to ring RNIB, or indeed other organisations who can give help, RNIB have got a very good benefit calculator. They can run through with you on the phone what you've got coming in, whether or not you could be making a claim for universal credit, whether you could be making a claim for PIP as well, or whether you're getting enough from your current award. These things are really key. They're very important for people to know when they're starting out, well, at any time of life, but especially when you're young and if you're coming out of home and you want to make your own way, or indeed if you are at home, you can make your own claim while you're at home. Benefits that your parents get for you would stop. You would become independent effectively in benefit terms and financial terms, so you would get your own benefit and they would not get it for you. You can claim universal credit from 18. You can get it when you're younger in some very limited circumstances, should we say, if you're already looking for a child or if you're a carer. Generally speaking, it's 18 though. So they're the two benefits I'd really like people to be aware of. And very quickly, I'll just do a quick word on something that if you were starting work, I was talking about this last night, access to work. Now, access to work is a system of a grant system that you can get to help you if indeed you've got a job that you might be able to start, but you know you're going to need extra equipment to be able to do it. So access to work, it's something you can apply for in conjunction with your employer. It's for anybody with a disability or health condition and provides practical support. It provides equipment that you might need. Doesn't cover standard equipment, but it does cover extra things that you might need, extra software you might need, for example, to make it possible for you to do a job. And it can actually run to quite a high amount of money over a period of years. Thousands of pounds can be awarded if you're eligible. There are waiting times for it, sadly, and that has been a bit of an issue for the government. But the government are very keen. You may have noticed if you watch the news, you'll know that the government are very keen to get people into work, and they're very keen for disabled people not to be on benefits if they don't need to be. They're a little bit too keen on that for my liking. But what they are going to do, and they are sort of committing to, is to put more money into helping people and helping employers help people to get into work. And the access to work thing is a key part of that. It's a key part of it for many, many of our service users at RNIB. So be aware of access to work and investigate it. Once again, you can contact us for information. The other thing we do have as well, going back to the benefits and indeed to access to work, we have fact sheets that explain how these things work and give you the best tips on how to go about making claims for the benefits that I've mentioned, the kind of things that you'll need in order to do that. With PIP, the kind of questions that you have to ask yourself on a daily basis and the kind of problems you have. Some things that are very easy to ignore because you get used to doing things for yourself, when in fact you might be taking longer than you realise. Our fact sheets are very good at pulling that out, at drawing out. So when you're making a claim, you can hopefully get the best out of that claim. And like I say, if you need actual help, somebody to guide you, take you through it, we can also provide that. So I'd be happy, I think, Ellen, if anybody has any questions, that's great. What I would say also, though, is that if you don't want to ask a question now, you're very welcome to email me. Ellen has my email, which I'll leave with people afterwards. And if anybody wants any of the fact sheets, I sent them all to Jane last night, actually. So she has all the fact sheets on all these topics that can be distributed freely.
Yeah, so we can add those to the resource that we make out of the session as well. Thank you so much, Dom, for giving us a real whistle-stop tour of all those essential bits of information that it's the kind of thing that you don't know if you don't know. Do you see what I mean? It's a bit of a minefield, isn't it? So it's so helpful to have this conversation with people in the know. Just following on from that, really, just to kind of, I'm a little bit conscious of time, so just be aware for people that we're running a little bit behind, but it's just such an interesting conversation. So we'll have a couple of questions and then close up. And I actually had one for you, Dom, just following your presentation. We've heard from a couple of different mentors today with different kind of experiences. How would you suggest that someone kind of what support is there for someone really trying to decide what support they actually need? Would that be something they could come to you guys for? So
Yeah,
Charlotte, Sorry.
No, that's no, absolutely. Of course they can. I mean, the whole point really is to the kind of information we have on the helpline. They have everything. Actually, I consider them to be a lot more clever than me, because they talk about all manner of things, not just benefits. They have information about all kinds of aspects of life, but benefits and access to work and things like this, they have that information as well. I think what the key thing, of course, is that things are different for different people, and people want different things. So you have to make sure that you're flexible in what you're advising. I think with the benefits, that they're generally, I suppose, they're reasonably universal in a way, especially the disability benefits, because they are for anybody. Nobody is restricted from having them, providing you tick the boxes for the criteria. I think the best thing to do is to have a reasonably clear idea in your mind as to what it is that you're looking for, and the things that you know you need support with. What we also have, and I haven't mentioned this yet actually, I work with the Legal Rights Service, and we also have Equality Act experts, and we have a community care expert as well, and she's brilliant, Nina. If you had a community care query, she has a team of people who work with her at RNIB, who are very good at finding out information and challenging social care decisions and getting extra money through those avenues as well. That's just another, it's another angle that may be relevant for people. So yeah, but just, if you contact the helpline on 0303 123 9999, you can be sourced off into different directions in terms of what it is you exactly need and what you might need help with.
Brilliant, thank you. That's really helpful. So just in terms of questions then, I know we've had maybe a couple of questions in the chat, and I know that people had submitted questions when signing up to attend as well. So Maria, have we got a question in the chat?
Yeah, we've just got one, but I think it's really, really important. And Dom, I think you might be the right person to help. It says, how can you check your PIP rate?
How do you check your PIP rates?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, the PIP rates at the moment, I mentioned before, didn't I? But the 101.75 for the highest daily enhanced daily living, and 71 for the highest mobility, and 68.10 for the standard daily living, and 26.90 for the lowest mobility. Now they're going to change on April the 6th, because the new year comes in, and they're going to shoot up by £7 or £8 each. They move, or not all of them actually. Some of the higher amounts move up because they're moving up by the rate of inflation, by a certain inflationary rate that was taken from last September or something. So they move it up by a certain amount. The way to check them, most PIP, virtually everybody's PIP is paid into the bank. There are one or two instances where it's not. You need to look at it, and they don't pay monthly, they pay 4 weekly. So what you need to look at every 4 weeks is have a look at the amount you're getting every 4 weeks. See if it makes sense in relation to the amounts that are currently being paid. What you can do quite easily, once again, is to ring our helpline and tell them what you're getting, and we'll be able to very quickly discern exactly what it is, whether it's standard of one and so much of the other. If you're getting the maximum amounts if you're getting the enhanced rates, I think that works out as something like on a monthly figure, it's about £750 or something. It's a reasonable amount of money, albeit if you're getting those rates, then you're probably spending a lot more money than most, because you need it for the extra costs that you have. The best way probably to check is just to keep if you can, check your bank. Or the other thing you can do, they will have sent you a letter. They invariably send a letter at the beginning of each year, actually, to everybody on PIP. This is probably the easiest way of the lot. If you've got access to your mail, and you'll get a letter in April, and it'll tell you what your new rate is and when it's going to be paid from. But it can be a bit confusing because they pay 4 weekly, not monthly. They don't pay weekly. They pay in arrears. But that's probably the best way to check is through the DWP letter.
And you're able to ask for that letter in different formats as well, aren't you?
You absolutely can. They're not always the best at doing this. It's interesting. They're not very good. They should be better than they are at providing things in a format that is accessible. Yes, you've got the right to it under the Equality Act. They do provide it, but they often forget, or they neglect to do so, shall we say. Information breaks down and they don't send that information in the right way. I often don't mind that because sometimes, well, quite frequently actually, people get overpaid and they try to get the money back from them. And I challenge the decisions by saying, well, hang on, you didn't tell them what they needed to do in a format that was correct for them. And I'll tell you what, it always wins. We always win, and they don't have to pay the money back because they haven't been informed in the
It's
right
hard to
way.
argue, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, the DWP, they're terrible at this. They don't provide it. They send little booklets with tiny writing to everyone, and they
Oh,
don't send it in bigger writing. They don't look at what somebody's needs are. They're terrible for it, and it gets themselves into trouble now and again.
Okay. Thank you. So that's a really good question from the chat. Thanks, Maria. Let me just see. We are coming up to 6 o'clock, so I think if people are happy for just one more question, I know that's something that had come up quite a lot in the sign-ups was around budgeting and any tips for budgeting. So, gonna be honest with everyone, when myself, Chloe, Charlotte, and Naki were kind of chatting in preparation for this session, we all sort of said, don't really know how I budget. Couldn't really think of a specific way to sort of advise. We thought of a couple of tricks that we do that are sometimes helpful. So it's kind of putting calendar reminders in for yourself for when certain bills are due out, so that you're aware of that. Setting up direct debits and standing orders for automatic payments that go out at a certain time, need to go out at a certain time each month. And maybe ensuring that those payments go out on a date that is after whatever date that you receive your income, whether that's a benefit or a salary or whatever it is, if that's doable with DWP's bizarre 4 weekly randomness. The other thing that we all, I think all of us confess, like, we have a spreadsheet somewhere, but it isn't one that we sort of regularly check, or
no, I
um
actually don't.
no, none of us are kind of very across it very much, but it is sometimes useful to have a record that you just keep, and you can review every now and again, maybe like yearly, or whenever your kind of circumstances change, a record of, right, these are the things that I'm getting in, and then these are the things that I know that have to go out. So just to make sure that you're aware of roughly what that amount is, so that if there is ever a discrepancy, you can be aware of it, you can notice it, and that way you're more likely to notice something like that.
Yeah, Ellen, can I
Yeah.
add something? I tend to try and look at my mobile app nearly every other week, just to check what I've spent is actually there. And I think because I was in supported living, it did help a little bit because we had to split all the bills into how many were in the house, so it was split into 6. So everyone had to give their bit, so it was kind of easier to budget. But I think because of that, I've kind of saved quite a bit of money, and now it's a bit like, oh, I don't actually need to budget at the moment because I've got the money there. I don't need to worry. But
Yeah. Thank you,
just
Charlotte.
if you've got just make sure you've got the money there, or you know,
It's
get
keeping a record,
make
isn't
sure you
it, so
have
that you're
benefits
aware
that
of
you're
what you're doing.
entitled to as well, to make sure you have the money there.
Yeah, making sure that you're aware of what you're getting in and what you're getting out.
Yeah.
And there are ways of doing that as well now that are making it a lot easier. So, like everybody said, mobile banking and mobile banking apps make life so much easier, so that you can quickly check these things. You also now, can get notifications whenever you make a payment to verify you've paid the right amount for whatever you've just paid for. So that really helps as well. And I think those are the main things. There's lots of tools online that you can use for budgeting, if it's something that you're concerned about. I know that Naki mentioned earlier lots of different resources and tools that we can include in this resource as well, that you can look up and have a go at with different formats and things. So there's lots of tools out there, but in terms of like a VI specific way of budgeting, I think it's just figuring out a system that works for you.
Yeah.
To be honest, unless any of the panel has anything else to add on that. Any budgeting tips? No? Okay, so I think on that note then we will finish up on a top tip each from each of our panelists, and then we will finish up. So, Naki, can I ask you for your top tip first, just to close us out, please?
Yep, I will say your money is yours. Make sure you use it wisely. Obviously, spend it wisely, but wherever you keep it for safeguarding, make sure it's being looked after well, and you're getting the most in terms of your money. We talked about various accounts and cards earlier, but really, really, really important, guys. Please, everyone, really be very wary of fraud and scams. Make sure that if something is too good to be true, it probably is. Just make sure that you're really vigilant in terms of everything, like people you meet, people you speak to. If someone asks you, let's say for your passport or whatever, pretending to be the bank, it's never true. So just please be really safe and make sure that you reach out to your bank to make sure that your rights are taken care of.
Thank you, Naki. Charlotte, do you have a top tip to share with the group?
Just to make sure that you have you get the right amount of benefits that you want. Make sure you get all of the benefit. So if your parent, say your parent wishes to take control of it, make sure that you actually get control of it. If you need support, it's about everyone's individual needs. So just remember what yours are, and just get the support that you need that's out there.
Thank you, Charlotte. Chloe, what about you?
Sort of saying the same thing as Charlotte, but just make sure that you get the benefits that you're entitled to, and there's no shame in getting benefits. Like at the end of the day, you have a disability and it costs more to be disabled. So get what you can. And also it is an intimidating process, applying for benefits, and it can be like quite emotional and quite stressful. So get help from sight loss charities or from, Citizens Advice, RNIB, wherever. Like it's okay to need help.
Thank you, Chloe. And Dom?
Yeah, I just echo everything that Charlotte and Chloe have said, really. Get a benefit check. It's free. It's absolutely free. Just ring up. They'll run through what you might be able to get, whether it be universal credit or maybe more PIP or a claim for PIP. And it'll also, they'll give you the help. It is an intimidating process, and it puts a lot of people off, sadly. And it shouldn't, because it's your right to have that benefit. And yeah, get a benefit check. Ring up and get a check. And take it from there, really.
Lovely. Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you to all of our lovely panelists today, mentors Charlotte, Chloe, and Naki, and Dom from the RNIB. Thank you for all of you for spending this hour with us as well, listening and giving us your time and your engagement and engaging in the discussion this afternoon.